There is no red, white, or blue in this country. The only color that matters is green because we live in the United Corporations of America.
Hey, I'm Ashley Bishop, and I am here today with Zaina Day for tonight's live stream with Status Coup. We have not been able to do this for a few weeks. John and I have been on the ground reporting from Bernie Sanders' Fight the Oligarchy tour in Pennsylvania. And yesterday we were at the ICE Immigration Detention Center, Delaney Hall, and we're going to show you some clips of our coverage there. So I am excited to be able to hang with Zaina and get her takes on all of the utter stupidity that has been happening all around us. And we have a lot that we want to get through tonight. So I guess we're just going to get right to it. The first thing that we wanted to talk about is the House hearing this past Wednesday on the Department of Homeland Security, where Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was pressed on a number of issues regarding her agency and it just being generally out of control. So we wanted to play a clip from that of Representative Eric Swalwell, a Democrat from California, pressing Kristi Noem on the recent removal of a 4-year-old child who was born in the U.S., so a U.S. citizen who is battling cancer. So, Colin, if we can play this video from
Madam
the
Secretary,
ICE hearing with Kristi Noem.
2 weeks ago, your agency deported a 4-year-old American citizen in a stage 4 cancer battle. What are you doing to get him back to the country so he can get his treatment?
Congressman, this mother wished to keep her family together and to take her child with her. So as every single person is given the opportunity to, medical care is given throughout the process.
Okay. So it sounds like
and
nothing.
For this child, medical care was confirmed in their home country so that it would continue, and those treatments and whatever needs were needed to be had into the future were confirmed to be provided there before.
That child's home country is the United States. Do you believe you have a right to deport a U.S. citizen?
That mother chose to keep her family together, and that is what President Trump is focused on.
That's not the facts of the case.
Yes, it is the facts.
Madam Secretary, moving on,
do you believe that she wanted to keep
you
her
have a
child
right
with her in the
That clip is awful. Watching Kristi Noem in all of these hearings, just kind of like blinking vacantly and talking about things are well like above her pay grade is infuriating. And her suggesting that like the parents wanted to keep their family together and that is a justification for all of this is insane. Of course, the mother wanted to keep the family together. That is a 4-year-old child, her 4-year-old child who has stage 4 cancer. Who would take care of them? Like if she decided that, oh no, we're just going to leave our child here, who takes care of that kid? Who takes care of that kid? How do they actually get that medical care that, he needs for cancer? I don't know.
It is a choice that wasn't a choice that existed. To keep her family together where the child was a U.S. citizen, which is in the United States, to continue the healthcare program that she had already been on, that this child had already been on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like, again, I don't think that you have to be a parent to understand that that is utterly insane. Like that is just like, as you said, it's a choice that's not actually a choice. Nobody is going to let their child just stay in a foreign country where they're clearly unwelcome and, let them be going through a traumatic experience like that. So I don't know. I watched something like that and I just can't help but wonder, like, what happened to people like Kristi Noem that made them so
no humanity.
Yeah. No humanity, no feeling. Like I don't know if Kristi Noem has children. I mean, I think for some people, unless they can like directly relate to something, they're unable to have any empathy. I mean, if you have kids, like how do you defend something like this? How do you defend separating a family in this way? I don't understand. I don't have children, but I can still see like obviously like that is not a choice that anyone's going to willingly make. And that is like the idea that you would impose that kind of like suffering on a child, on that mother. I don't know. It
To
just
even change the regimen, to even have to switch and move, and all of the stress that comes along with all those transitions in the middle of fighting against cancer of a 5-year-old is just insane. I mean, even if they, and I'm of course against any deportations of this manner, but even if they try to make this argument, they could have waited until after this child's treatment. They could have given it time instead of rushing this and pushing them out of the country and then pretending like it was some kind of choice. But that they had done the humane thing of making sure that they have health care where they're going. But imagine having to completely restart your life somewhere else, another job, another life, another housing situations, all the stress that comes with finding transportation to and from the healthcare facilities, everything that goes into fighting a chronic illness like this. There's so many layers here that aren't transparent in what Kristi Noem is arguing.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's all indefensible. I don't know. It's indefensible. And if you can find some justification for this, then I'm sorry that something has made you lose your humanity, because that is just, again, indefensible. As are many of the other things that her department, her agency is doing right now. So we also have a clip of Representative Julie Johnson, again, pressing Kristi Noem and talking about the fact that apparently you can buy an ICE agent jacket on Etsy. So let's go to the clip of Julie Johnson.
Recognize Ms. Johnson for 5 minutes questions.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Texas
Chairman.
to Texas.
And thank you, Madam Secretary, for appearing before committee today. I want to address several issues. I'm going to try not to repeat a lot of issues that have been addressed, but I do have some substantial concerns over how ICE agents present themselves to the public. Oftentimes, we've seen many videos out there where they're masked and not properly identified. I have a lot of real personal concern about that. I just put myself in the situation of that woman from Tufts, for example. You're just walking down the street, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, 3 masked men, not properly identified, attack you and try to take you away. I find that to be reprehensible and not the values of this country. What steps are you taking to make sure that your ICE agents are not masked and properly identified when they approach someone?
Well, ICE agents always identify themselves to individuals that they're encountering or that they're working with. What I would say, as far as if they are wearing something over their faces, it's oftentimes because that agent has been involved in undercover operations or needs to be able to continue the investigative work that they do on a day-to-day basis.
But don't you think, Madam Secretary, that people have a right to see whoever's trying to apprehend them? I think it's creating this unrealistic vigilante system. And are you aware that your materials, ICE agents, jackets, and the sorts are available on Etsy for $20? Anybody can do that, throw a mask on, and run around and terrorizing people of color without any regard for the law, without any regard, because your agency does not have proper protocols to make sure their agents are clearly identified and marked when they're executing their jobs.
Our agents do identify themselves. They verbally do that, and then also by the clothing that they're wearing. And if they do have something that is covering some of their facial features, it's for their investigative work or their undercover work that they do as a part of their job duties as well. What I would say is that it is important that we follow the procedures and protocols for every encounter that we have, and they have done that in every situation to the best of my knowledge.
Well, I would suggest that your protocols need to be revised, because I don't think it's reasonable for masked men to be apprehending people on the streets. I think that instills a lot of fear. It doesn't instill security in the process. And in states like Texas, that is open carry, when any jackadoo can be walking around with a gun, I think some tragic circumstances are at bay.
I mean, Johnson is right. And the idea that, just watching Kristi Noem like try to defend that and say clearly incorrectly that her, the ICE agents are always identifying themselves. It's just like the whole thing is just maddening, because
She
we
lied.
know.
She's a freaking liar.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've seen this. We've seen this. Every single case where someone has been disappeared, they've just been snatched off the street. And Johnson mentioned Rumeysa Ozturk. She said that she was terrified that they were going to kill her because it was just a bunch of guys in hoodies who snatched her off the street. They didn't identify themselves. They haven't been identifying themselves in any of these cases. So it's like, to sit there and just, as you said, blatantly lie like that is insane. Just totally insane. And the justification that she's using is, some of these agents are engaged in undercover work, as she said, undercover work. That is the reason why their faces have been covered. That is the reason, they're in plain clothes, which she said that they were not, which they are.
Yeah.
That is not a justification. If they are engaged in undercover work that would prevent them from properly identifying themselves to the people that, again, they're snatching off the streets, then maybe they are not fit to be taking part in these disappearances. Maybe they should find other officers who are able to actually identify themselves and be wearing the proper, identifying gear.
But she is correct. The policy since the Obama era has allowed them to cover their faces and wear civilian clothing and not have to identify themselves. This has been in place since the Obama era. And of course, it's ramped up. I'm not saying it was as bad then. It was still bad. It's worse now. But the fact is that when Johnson says that they need to revise the code of ethics or the procedures and policy, that's absolutely correct. Just because something is law doesn't mean that it's okay. And these are the same people. Kristi Noem is the same person that will argue against things like human trafficking, sex trafficking, things like that, while at the same time having a system that would completely enable people who would want to snatch individuals off the street and kidnap them. This enables that system because if an ICE agent doesn't have to identify themselves, they're wearing civilian clothes, they're masked. It could be anyone snatching up these people.
Absolutely. And I went on Etsy after watching this and I found one of the jackets. So, Colin, if you could pull up a link, I mean, you can see it right there. It just says ICE immigration and the listing calls it a custom replica. So, a custom replica ICE jacket for sale on Etsy for $40. So like you said, Zaina, anyone can wear this and they can cosplay as ICE. And
in case you want to dress up like the Gestapo for Halloween, I guess.
Yeah, no, seriously. It's just crazy. It's crazy that you can purchase that. And it's crazy that Kristi Noem would defend that. I mean, crazy, but also not at all unexpected. I mean, this is exactly the kind of behavior that you would expect from anyone who is in, Trump's inner circle.
And it sticks out to me that they didn't push more, that they're not even wearing insignia when they're kidnapping these people. Almost all of these cases that we've seen are just people in some of them in bulletproof vest once, the rest of the reinforcements get there. But most of these people are simply in civilian clothes with their faces covered.
It's crazy.
And if they're doing it doesn't even make logical sense because if someone is undercover, then that person needs to step aside and the people doing the actual arrest need to be people whose faces are visible. Even in undercover policing, you don't see this. The undercover people leave and the SWAT team or whatever police officers or FBI agents that aren't undercover do the arrest. That's standard protocol.
Yeah.
And to protect their identities. So they'll go, and I'm not advocating for that. I'm saying her logic doesn't even make sense. Why are the people that are undercover doing the arrest as well? It's just an excuse for them to be able to hide their identities so that they're not doxxed online because they're recruiting police officers. They could potentially be recruiting civilians because a program was floated and we don't know if they're using that or not. And I've been trying to research that for several days now to see if that's been implemented. The Trump administration has floated utilizing civilians. We have no idea. We have no idea if these, are local law enforcement that have been deputized, if they're Proud Boys that are being deputized to do this, if they're just intermingling with these militia groups in order to help them, we don't know because we cannot see their faces.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, yes to all of that. It's all extraordinarily concerning, and there is no oversight whatsoever on this agency. And on that, so John and I went to Delaney Hall yesterday. So that is the Immigration Detention Center in Newark, New Jersey, where Newark Mayor Ross Baraka was arrested on Friday. So we went down there to see people, to talk to the people essentially who have been protesting. There's a group of people who have been protesting at the center since February. So since the deal, the $1 billion deal was announced with Geo Group in February, they've been out there, multiple times a week at least protesting. So we went down there to talk to them, and I wanted to play a clip from one of the organizers that I spoke to. So this is a woman, Kathy. So Colin, if you could play the clip of Kathy from Delaney Hall.
That's
yesterday.
disheartening, but it's all the more reason why we need to be out here and we need to be watching. That's kind of the other idea is that they're not going to tell us what's going on inside. So we need to sit here and we need to watch. We need to see. We can actually walk to all the way to the back of their property on county property, and and see what's going on. So we can walk around a lot of the property. So and we have been. So and we're taking notes and we're seeing who's coming in, when they're coming in, how many people are coming in. We're here when they decide to arbitrarily end visitation for families. We're here when families are afraid to go up to the gate because of all these armed whatever, I don't know what they are, ICE agents, I guess, that are here. So yeah, there's this kind of a multitude of reasons and purposes for us to be here, but
well, we appreciate you guys conducting citizen oversight on the facility.
Yeah, well, they won't let the Congress people in, and they won't let the mayor in, so we're going to do what we can. The other thing is, as long as they're sitting here looking at us and defending this, they can't be in the neighborhood. So we see that as a win.
So again, that was Kathy, who I spoke to. She works with a bunch of organizations, a lot of Catholic-led organizations in Newark. So she's very active in the community, and there's been, as she explained to me, a core group of people who have been out, like we said, kind of conducting citizen oversight. Since our government is not going to conduct any actual oversight, this is what we've been left to. So people, protecting their own communities, essentially. So
courageous and risky because they're threatening to arrest members of Congress for simply telling people what their legal rights are, just like they tried to do with Ilhan Omar and AOC. So I commend people like Kathy who are stepping up to the plate to do this work.
Absolutely, and it's like she said, it's necessary. It's necessary, and nobody else is going to do it. So yeah, I thought that was a really good interview with her, and I'm just going to take this opportunity, even though it's hard to always kind of draw people's attention to the fact that it takes us resources to do this kind of stuff. And John and I do want to be able to do more of this on the ground reporting. And I think it's important. I think it's important for us to be out there. There was nobody else there yesterday. There was Fox News had been given express permission to be there. They had a saved parking space and everything. So they were the only news outlet that was allowed to be there yesterday. So it was Fox News, who I didn't actually see speaking to anyone the whole time that we were there. But it was just John and I. So again, if people are able to, please do consider becoming a member of Status Coup at statuscoup.com/join so that we can do more of that, because having people like Kathy actually being given the mic and being able to talk about why they're out there, it's really important. I didn't know that there was a group of people that have been protesting in front of Delaney Hall since February. like they've just been out there, doing their thing for that whole time. It wasn't just since like last Friday that people, like nationally, there wasn't a lot of attention on Delaney Hall until Friday. It hasn't been that way for residents of Newark. So again, it's important.
They've been fighting the permit issues for quite some time there.
Yeah, and Baraka he's sued Geo Group, I believe, or is in the process of suing Geo Group. I think that started in February, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's been a lot going on there. And it is important to be covering that Geo Group. The contract that they have with the government is a 15-year long contract for $1 billion, and they expect to be able to bring in $60 million in revenue annually for this contract. So not only are they detaining people, they're also profiting off of the misery and the separation of families and all of that. So again, it's important that the protesters who are out there remain out there. And tomorrow, John and I are going to be on the ground. Baraka is going to have his arraignment hearing tomorrow at 10 in Newark. So we will be on the ground in Newark tomorrow. So do if you guys can, do watch that, because we'll be out there. There's going to be I want to say a protest and a march, and also Mayor Baraka's arraignment. So, it looks like we lost Zaina for a second. So I am going to move along, and then when she comes back, we will get back into any other thoughts that she has on Delaney Hall. But the next thing that we wanted to talk about was Trump ending birthright citizenship, his crusade to end birthright citizenship. So we have a CNN article on this. Colin, if you could pull that up. Okay, so this is from CNN. Why Trump's effort to end birthright citizenship may be a legal loser, but still give the president a major boost. So the article says, as the Supreme Court hears arguments Thursday on a major Donald Trump policy for the first time in his second term, the president could secure a significant win affecting many of the lawsuits against his administration out of a case that is otherwise widely seen as a legal loser. I would hope that it's seen as a legal loser. It is, in fact, that. Trump has taken his attempt to end birthright citizenship, the longstanding practice of granting citizenship to any child born on U.S. soil, regardless of their parents' immigration status, to the high court. But in doing so, Trump officials made an intentional decision not to ask the court to review the constitutionality of the policy, which appears to run afoul of the 14th Amendment and more than 120 years of court precedent. Instead, the Justice Department wants the justices to focus on the power of lower court judges generally to issue orders blocking presidential measures nationwide, a major pet peeve of Trump. We are thrilled to get this issue before the justices, a senior administration official told CNN. There's Zaina. She's back.
So sorry, I was having some technical difficulties.
No. You're good. So unless you have any other thoughts on Delaney Hall, we're going to talk about Trump ending birthright citizenship. And I know that you had a lot that you wanted to say about that and the way in which they are trying to pull this off.
Absolutely.
I read the first 3 paragraphs of this article. They're basically CNN is framing this as a legal loser, is what they say in the article, which makes sense. I mean, the idea that they are trying to end birthright citizenship for children born in the U.S. is crazy. And how do you deal with something like that? I'm not even sure how you deal with that, because it's like, what then? Do you pass on immigration status from your parents as if it's some kind of you're Italian and therefore your children are Italian. Oh, you were born in the US, therefore your kids are US citizens. But if you are born in the US and your parents were born in Ecuador or Guatemala, then you are Ecuadorian and Guatemala, even if Guatemalan, even if you've never been to those countries before and you only know the US? How does that make any sense? It makes
And
no
in that case, then if someone becomes a citizen, or if people are like, how does it makes no sense. Like, how does it work? Could there be like 5 generations of people that never gain citizenship because they've made citizenship requirements impossible, and then children that are born here can be 2-3 generations in and not have citizenship? But one of the things that really strikes me with this is the fact that the Trump administration is angling in a way where they want to challenge district judge rulings. For years now, district judge rulings can push against an executive order. Pushing against that executive order stalls that executive order nationally, because an executive order is national. This is not a state mandate. It is a national mandate. So if a district judge or a attorney general pushes back against, or a Supreme Court within a state pushes back against an executive order and claims that that is unconstitutional, that will freeze that executive order, correct? Because of the systems of checks and balances. What the Trump administration is utilizing the birthright citizen argument to do is to say, okay, well, what we're going to look at here is individual litigation. So each and every case has to be vetted for the merits of its individual case, which means that they have to bring class action lawsuits, and then they're arguing that it has to be escalated all the way up to the Supreme Court and then heard at the Supreme Court in order for it to be halted. So there's some squishy ground here that the Supreme Court may very well completely change our precedent structure that we have had since the founding of the country, to then argue that if, and it's interesting because the right wing have argued for the longest time with the philosophy that I agree with, that there should be expanded states' rights to a certain extent, that they should be able to push back against executive overreach, that states should be able to push back against that. This is basically saying states have no right to push back against federal legislation, in a sense, and that they would have to write some sort of state laws. And then it gets into a really crazy area where in one state, and if you're in Florida, you can have birthright citizenship, but you can be denied birthright citizenship. But then if you're in Missouri, you can have birthright citizenship as long as it's legal in that state. This is an impossible scenario. And it's also unconstitutional, which means that it would be unconstitutional nationally. So this is a losing case nationally at the Supreme Court level to argue for birthright citizenship. But if the Supreme Court, if their argument is district attorneys are overreaching because they cannot mandate if executive orders are constitutional or not within the districts, that it has to be mandated within the Supreme Court of the United States, then we're looking at a series where it has to be pushed from the district attorney to which this is how things escalate to the Supreme Court, but it has to go this way every time. It has to start within the district court, then go to the Supreme Court of the state, then go to the national Supreme Court. So it has to be pushed off, which could be years down the road. And at the same time, trying to argue this executive order will remain in place, even if it's unconstitutional, until it reaches all the way to the Supreme Court. So they can mandate anything. And then for a year or two, this completely unconstitutional, insane thing is being mandated from the executive branch. It can be sheer authoritarianism mandated from the executive branch, and district attorneys have no power to stop it until it reaches SCOTUS.
I mean, it's just insane. That whole thing is just insane. And the idea that like individual cases need to make their way up and be, approved on a case by case basis.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. I mean, can you imagine like the stress that would put on the legal system? I mean, we don't have enough judges in this country to do that. I don't even know, like, the idea of putting that forward, it just doesn't make any sense. And we do not have anywhere near the resources that would allow that to happen, which is, I'm sure, part of the intent, right? They're well aware of this. And that is just a way to hold people up in the legal system indefinitely. And then you have people who, like you said, someone can be, illegal in Florida, but legal in New York. How does that
Mhm.
work? How does that work? And the idea that you aren't going to create these, like, mass, like, exoduses from these different states is crazy. Of course, like, if you are able to be a citizen in New York, then people, like, if you're going to have a child, you're going to go there and you're going to flee these other places. Like, none of it makes any sense. And this is,
There's also
they
the
want to.
monetary issue. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, no, no, no. You're good. I was just gonna add that, like, the way that they're trying to pull this off sounds very reminiscent of states' rights and, returning the right to have an abortion to the states. So, we've returned that right to the states so that really we can just end the whole thing, which is what it's always been about. And that's what this is about too. It's returning, giving states the right to make these decisions so that it just basically makes all of this go away.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And they it's a way for them to mandate their executive overreach legally, because then there's no recourse to fight against it on the state and district level, which may be unconstitutional within itself, because you should be able to push back against unconstitutional executive orders from the district and state level. And if you can't, that's a massive problem. And that basically creates a situation of authoritarianism. And then on top of that, the Supreme Court passed, what was it, while Biden was still in office, that a president essentially has immunity over a blanket of illegal things that they can do, including constitutionality, unless it's determined by the Supreme Court and they're impeached by Congress. So they have immunity until they're out of office. And that means that this administration can essentially do anything they want, and then district judges can't push against it. Which, if this was turned and it was a Democratic president, not that Democrats would ever fight for Medicare for all. Let's not kid ourselves, but let's say hypothetical. The Democratic Party was like, okay, we're going to pass Medicare for all. And there were district judges that were pushing against that, saying it's unconstitutional, which these scenarios have happened. Republicans have been pushing against certain policies through their district court judges for 30 years now? How many times did they do this with Roe v. Wade? And they did the same thing with student loans. They fought student loan forgiveness through the district courts, right? So you turn it on its head, and you would have people from this administration, you would have conservatives arguing, this is executive overreach. You can't block our district courts in, Oklahoma. How dare you? This is executive overreach. This is tyranny. But the Trump administration does it, and it's being normalized. And then we have a 6-3 conservative court, which some of them have surprised me on baseline constitutional matters in voting in ways that are, positive in a way to protect liberties, but then also they're very wishy-washy, right? So I have no idea how this will come down. I do not think that this is just my opinion. I do not think, as you were mentioning before, that it is going to be the birthright citizenship is going to be ended. But I also think that this precedent that they're trying to set, where district judges have no say over what is constitutional or not, is dangerous. Because Trump could literally roll out martial law in a state and say, we're going to roll out martial law, and I'm going to commandeer the National Guard there. And then the people in Colorado couldn't then say, the district attorneys in Colorado couldn't then say this is unconstitutional, and that would then halt that executive order that is completely outrageous. So it opens up the door for outrageous executive orders just to go on until it reaches all the way up to SCOTUS, which is extremely dangerous. And we're already seeing that right now. We're seeing that tenfold, but it would make it worse because at least there's a system, a weak system, but a system to fight against it right now. But
Yeah, I mean it's all terrifying, right? And any judges who have kind of pushed back in even the weakest ways against any of this have also been, sort of under attack. So, Colin, if you could pull up the next link about Judge Hannah Dugan, who was indicted for helping an immigrant flee ICE. So, a federal grand jury indicts Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan in ICE case. A federal grand jury indicted Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan on May 13th on charges that she tried to assist an undocumented immigrant escape arrest from her courtroom last month, putting her at the center of the growing dispute between President Donald Trump and the judiciary. The two-page indictment accuses Dugan, 66, of obstructing a U.S. agency and concealing an individual to prevent an arrest. The two charges carry a maximum penalty of 6 years in prison and a $350,000 fine, but sentences in cases involving nonviolent offenses typically are much shorter. Dugan is expected to enter a plea at a May 15th hearing, but members of her defense team issued this statement. As she said after her unnecessary arrest, Judge Dugan asserts her innocence and looks forward to being vindicated in court. The indictment came after a string of witnesses entered the federal courthouse throughout the day on May 13th to justify before the grand jury. I mean, that is crazy. That's crazy. So any judge that, again, pushes back on this in any way is going to, be arrested? That's what we're doing now. It's again, I just think that is a new low, a new low.
it's a fear. It's a fear it's a tactic to strike fear. I mean, it's the same reason that they harassed, Hassan Abi and we talked about that yesterday, Hassan Abi at ICE when he came back, or Customs and Border Patrol, and had harassed Hassan Abi when he came back from France at the airport yesterday. It's the same kind of thing. It's classic McCarthy era tactics to send a chilling effect. Dugan is being used as an example. They're trying to send an example out of her. And I worry that, they're going to try to throw the maximum that they can at her. 6 years and $250,000 is insane. It's insane.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's all right. I think that's all right. And, we covered a TikTok influencer, Eyes of Sav, who at the end of April, I believe, she was detained in the Miami airport by ICE. She runs a TikTok account that is, critical of Trump. She also runs a store it's called Trump for the Dump, I think. Where, she sells like merchandise. She sells t-shirts that say things like, elect a clown, expect a circus, it's stuff like that. It's, pretty innocuous kind of like, anti-Trump merchandise. But they held her up. They held her up in the Miami airport for hours and they interrogated her. They went through her phone. They went through her possessions. And like you said, it's an intimidation tactic. It is to tell her, like, you are on our radar. She was coming back from a vacation in, I want to say Spain. That might not be correct, but she was overseas and, coming back to the country, and they want her to shut up. That's it. Like, they want her to shut up, and they want her to feel the next time that she's about to say something critical of the administration, to second guess herself. To think, I don't want this to happen to me again, so I'm going to shut up. I am going to keep whatever comments I have to myself. I'm going to shut down my store. That's what they want. And they want, for when other people hear about her story, which, she posted about it on TikTok. She made several videos. When other people hear her story, they want to think, oh, I don't want that to happen to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm also going to, bite my tongue where I would have not been silent. And it's extremely scary. And the idea that this is happening to influencers, this is happening to judges, like who next?
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys should go check out that interview. I watched it last night. It's really great. There's a ton of great coverage that Ashley has been doing, that Ashley and John Farina have been doing on the ground coverage. But that interview was really good. You guys should go check it out. Check out our others. I know we've still been kind of suppressed in the algorithm. So if you can like those videos, comment when you're on there so that more eyes can see them, because these are really, really, really important stories to tell.
Absolutely. And yeah, we all have a lot of good work on there. Zana has a lot of great videos, so please do go watch and like and subscribe and all that stuff so that other people see our work too. And on the topic of people being silenced and intimidated, Colin, if you could pull up the next link. So this is a tweet from John Hudson, which says, Tulsi Gabbard fired the top 2 officials at the National Intelligence Council after the council authored an assessment that contradicted Trump's rationale for invoking the Alien Enemies Act and deporting alleged Venezuelan gang members without due process. So again, the top 2 officials at the National Intelligence Council, after they contradicted the Trump administration, were fired. So, another tactic to get people to be silent. This administration cannot handle any kind of dissent. Anyone who has any kind of countering opinion, anyone that is critical in any way of the administration, this could happen to you. So you could be arrested, you could be fired from your job, you could be detained, anything. And it's important to note when we're talking about this, a lot of the people who have been detained, like Rumeysa Ozturk, she authored a pro-Palestine paper. So she authored something that was, against what the Trump administration wants people to be talking about at a time where they are toying around with the idea of suspending habeas corpus. So no due process for anybody. They can just, if you say something that they don't like, they can take you away. And that's it.
Yeah, and they can do it masked and in civilian clothing.
Yeah, or you can buy yourself, an ICE agent jacket off of Etsy, and you can go do that too and be part of the whole thing. And apparently, we are so concerned about immigrants coming here unless you are white and from South Africa. If that is you, then none of the above applies. White South Africaners have been given refugee status, where Palestinians have not. Ukrainers, I don't know how you would say that.
Ukrainians, they've actually
Oh,
rolled back
Ukrainians.
refugee status for Ukrainians as well, and they've been deporting Ukrainians. And refugee status has been frozen. So refugee status is frozen and refugees are being deported, which we'll get to another story in just a moment about, refugees being about Afghani refugees have also been frozen and are threatening to be deported. So yeah, they've frozen all refugee status and then opened it up for South Afrikaners.
Yeah.
Under the guise that the South Afrikaners are enduring a genocide in South Africa.
That's fucking insane. That is absolutely insane to provide refugee status under that pretense for white South Africaners, like, and to the exclusion of people in Palestine, is like, it blows my mind. Like, there is an actual genocide happening in Palestine right now, has been happening for a year and a half. And they cannot get refugee status, but other people can, I don't know. It's just crazy. And it's hard to read that as anything other than just blatant racism.
It's
There's
racism, and it's propagating the idea and promoting the idea of segregationism and normalizing apartheid, segregationism. It's painting the whole, white replacement theory, white national agenda. It's extremely nefarious. I have no issue with anyone applying for refugee status that needs it, even people that are South Afrikaners. But centering South Afrikaners under the guise of they're the truly oppressed. White people are the truly oppressed, and that, or white individuals who were responsible, some of them, for apartheid are the truly oppressed. It's that turning it on the head. It's the same Israel narrative, right? Where Israelis are the true oppressed peoples, while the Israeli government and Knesset is carrying out an act of genocide that we are funding, that are starving 2 million people, less than 2 million people now, every day, starving them, bombing them, leveled Gaza. But somehow, you know, Israel is the true victim in this. It's the same kind of logic. And it's extremely nefarious. And yeah, it's very racist. And when you look at the erosion of quote unquote DEIA and what that actually means, when you look at rolling back our civil liberties past 1965 in some of Trump's recent executive orders, when we're rolling back Title IX and protections for women, what we are looking at is modern, and this isn't an exaggeration, is modern potentialities for segregation. You know, Trump is funding HSBCUs, which looks great on the face of it, but is a Trojan horse because he is at the same time rolled back anti-discrimination rules for colleges. So now colleges can discriminate as much as they want. They're not even allowed to evaluate it or they will lose federal funding. But he's funding HSBCUs over here where Black people belong in his mind. It's giving separate but equal. And now we're talking about, let's bring in South Afrikaners. This is deliberate. Let's stock the U.S., you know, let's bring in a bunch of people that are $1 million, you know, multi-centimillionaires with these golden tickets. And then also let's bring in South Afrikaners. It's literally, I mean, we're looking at the foundations of a modern apartheid state in the United States. And I don't think that that's an exaggeration. This administration is telling us this by supporting South Afrikaners as the only specifically white South Afrikaners are the only people that can apply. So there's a racial bias too. You can't be a South Afrikaner who's Black and apply. You have to be a white South Afrikaner.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just like all of this kind of just like leaves me feeling like I'm living in some like weird fever dream. I don't know how, again, you can legitimately say some of these things and feel convinced by them in any way, how you can put forth like the idea that they are the most deserving group of refugee status when, again, you have all of these other like legitimate things happening. I don't know. I find it hard to believe that any of these people can believe themselves because it just seems so outlandish to me.
Nelson Mandela was a certified terrorist until 2009 by the United States government.
Right. So we have
South
a legacy
African
of
apartheid
greatness.
was not that far away. Their farmers still own 75% of the land. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There's a slight delay. Go ahead.
No. You're good. I mean, it's just all crazy. It's all crazy, and we just have a long history of being shitty, essentially. And speaking of being shitty, the next thing that we wanted to talk about on this topic is an article from NPR. So, Colin, if you could pull up the NPR article. So this is from NPR. White House welcomes Afrikaners to the U.S. but drops protection for Afghan allies. As many as 9,000 Afghan refugees are at risk of deportation as the Trump administration has ended the temporary protective status, TPS, that allowed them to stay in the U.S. legally. The White House says their country is no longer dangerous for them, a contention that confounds Afghanistan watchers. It's a death penalty for them if they return. said Zia Ghafouri, who worked as an interpreter in combat with U.S. Army Special Forces from 2002 to 2014. Ghafouri was received by President Trump at the White House in 2019 and became a U.S. citizen in 2020. He's a big supporter of our veterans, and that's what we love about the president, Ghafouri said. Maybe he's not aware how the policy is going to affect our Afghan allies. I don't know what's happening behind the scenes. I hope we can keep those promises that we made, he added. But unfortunately, right now, I don't know how to explain that to the families that are here and living in stress and depression without any immigration status. Ghafouri says the move also affects thousands of Afghans in limbo, including 13 members of his own family that had been set to fly to the U.S. from Pakistan when the Trump administration canceled flights for Afghans earlier this year. Ending TPS for Afghans is part of the administration's stated goal of realigning the United States refugee admissions program. It is a realignment that saw the Trump administration on Monday welcome the first group of white South African refugees under an executive order mandating that they be prioritized for resettlement. This administration is returning TPS to its original temporary intent, said Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem in a statement on Monday. I mean, again, like all of this, it kind of just leaves me without language to express how I'm feeling. It's just so backwards and so heartless. I don't understand. I mean, we're welcoming this group in who, like you said, like I don't have a problem with people coming here. I don't have a problem with immigration. I don't have a problem with people applying for refugee status if it is necessary. But the idea that this is the privileged group that we should be letting in right now is insane. It's insane. And we are pushing people out to make way for that. People out who have legitimate reasons to be here, who have legitimate claims on refugee status.
It from a country that we decimated. That people that worked with our military or put themselves in compromising positions that could lose their lives if they were sent back, we're just going to just be like, screw you. We screwed up your country. We bombed the hell out of it. We put you in harm's way. We promised to protect you when we did, but now we're just to hell with you. Pack your bags. It's extremely abhorrent. And the fact that they're prioritizing white people, the white race, after saying that they have to dismantle DEI, that they're not prioritizing, they don't see color, they don't see race, but they're prioritizing white Afrikaners. It's never been about not seeing race. It's never been about racial equality. And if nothing else proves it, this does. This does. No other refugees from Africa or even South Africa other than white Afrikaners, white specifically.
Yeah. I mean, some of this stuff, it challenges my ability to have anything to say. It's just, it leaves me feeling just so, I don't know, almost like despairing. And these are, it's, when we're talking about I think the article said 9,000 people, 9,000 Afghan refugees who are at risk of deportation. Like those are 9,000 people who were trying to build a life here. They're trying to build a life here who are just being separated from what they've come to know. They are residents in people's communities. They're people's neighbors. They're mothers and fathers with kids who are trying to I don't know, raise their kids here and not be
legally. Yeah.
And to just look at that and go, yeah, that's fine. Leave. We're done with you now. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. I don't know. We had one more thing that I'm gonna skip ahead of because it's almost 6, so I'm going to skip ahead to the next thing that we wanted to talk about, and it's kind of on theme of the U.S. Terrorizing vulnerable populations in this country. So we also wanted to talk about the massive proposed cuts to Medicaid. So Colin, if you could put up the first link for GOP work requirements for Medicaid. That would be great. I believe Okay, so this is from Politico. We also have a video, but this is the piece that I'm going to read first. So it's from Politico. House GOP hardliners digging in on Medicaid work requirements. Ultra conservatives are demanding changes in order to support the legislation, which GOP leaders want to put to a floor vote next week. House GOP hardliners are livid over a move by leadership to delay implementation of new work requirements for Medicaid for several years. It's one of the thorniest and politically explosive pieces of the GOP mega bill, and ultra conservatives are demanding changes in order to support the legislation, which GOP leaders want to put to a floor vote next week. Hardliners want to move up the start date for the work requirements, which are set to begin in 2029 under the current language in the bill. Speaker Mike Johnson is trying to navigate a host of far-right demands before a final vote, but he's also facing strong opposition from centrists to many of those asks, including the push to move up the start date for the Medicaid work requirements. These hardliners have vented their frustrations to both GOP leaders and White House officials this week. They're especially upset over the push from SALT Republicans to significantly boost the key tax deduction for high-tax blue states. House GOP leaders are deeply wary of making further Medicaid changes, especially to the work requirements. Johnson asked Wednesday morning, which is this morning, if he would agree to move up the Medicaid work requirement start date in the bill. Wouldn't comment. We have lots of discussions ahead, Johnson added. So that is from a piece from Politico on the proposed cuts to Medicaid. I mean, this is deeply unpopular. This is deeply unpopular. People don't want this. People in the country don't want this. There are, I want to say, I wish I could remember this number off the top of my head. I want to, maybe you know, Zaina, but I think there's, 75 million people on Medicaid currently in the country?
The number fluctuates, but I think that's close.
I think
They're
I want to say
close
currently it's
close to 100 million. Yeah.
okay. So somewhere in that ballpark, and I want to say that we have like 7 million kids on adjacent programs. I mean, the idea that this is what they're working on, like this is what they're working on right now, trying to cut Medicaid for, again, like the most vulnerable people in the country, is insane. Meanwhile, they're doing this to make room for their trillions of dollars in tax cuts for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, you hear this stuff day after day, and I don't know. I don't know what to say about it anymore. I mean, this is a full-blown class war to an extent that, like, it is just undeniable. Right. And it used to feel, even a few years ago, like you'd say that to people and they go, sure, whatever. But I think that most people, it's just all so out in the open now. It's just so out in the open now. We're making these trade-offs, which, we've talked about, the trade-off on refugee status. We are trading off all of these different things. Vulnerable groups are getting screwed, and whatever, benefit, let's call it, for lack of a better word, they were getting, it's being transferred to, the least deserving of anything.
And these work requirements, make it difficult for people who are sole proprietorships or contractors to be able to get Medicaid on top of that. And when we have this new patchwork economy where there's a lot less people that are working as 40-hour work week, protected under the label umbrella as quote unquote employed by an institution, and instead are being relegated to temp work or contract work, like a large percentage of us are now, then that's a problem. Another problem is it's impossible to meet a work requirement when you are between jobs, when you may need Medicaid the most and your children may need Medicaid the most. So, they're making it almost impossible for people to be able to apply for Medicaid, which is the whole purpose of it. Because if you are working a job, you're likely going to be priced out of Medicaid as it is.
Yeah.
It's hard to get Medicaid as it is. You have to be like well below poverty wages. I think it's like 18,000, less than $18,000 a year to be able to apply as an adult with one child, which is crazy. Who can live on that? So there's only a very small percentage of Americans that can actually apply. And it is like 74 million Americans. But think about that. Think about how many Americans are in poverty, to be able to apply and afford that. And also, it makes it harder on single mothers, because then it's also trying to say that even if the biological father is not involved in the child's life, their pay has to be considered, which is something that is kind of crazy, even if they pay child support. So if that was to be passed, then that could mean that somebody who's not even taking care of a child, their funds are being considered in that, but there's no mandate for them to purchase insurance for the child, so you're just going to kick the child off Medicaid. So there's a lot of problematic things. But I know we wanted to show this video of Mike Johnson. So we heard that Mike Johnson is supporting drastic cuts to Medicaid, and he's trying to balance it with some of the moderates that are like, this is going to completely screw us over in the midterms. Then on top of it, he's arguing that Congress should have the right to do insider trading because they don't make that much, even though they make 3 to 10 times what we make as our median income across the country.
They're
Well, look,
they're struggling.
the salary of
They're
Congress has
struggling.
been frozen since 2009. When you adjust for inflation, a member of Congress today is making 31% less than they made in that year. It goes down every year. And over time, if you stay on this trajectory, you're going to have less qualified people who are willing to make the extreme sacrifice to run for Congress. I mean, it's just people just make a reasonable decision as a family on whether or not they can come and move to Washington, have a residence here, a residence at home, and do all the things that are required. So the counter argument is, and I have some sympathy, look, at least let them engage in some stock trading so that they can continue to take care
What a jackass.
These people are fucking clowns. I'm sorry. That is one of the least serious things I have ever heard in my entire life. And it's like, we're both laughing because it's just so fucking ridiculous. How you can say something like that and take yourself seriously as a thinking human being, I don't know. I certainly do not take him seriously as a thinking human being. So maybe there are others who feel the same, because you should. But we're
Nancy Pelosi
laughing.
needs her $1 billion.
Yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene needed that money.
Yeah.
How dare you? It's just crazy.
What incentive will people have to run? He's basically like, what incentive will they have to run if they can't do insider trading? That's what he suggested.
How sad.
That out loud.
How sad that would be. I would be so upset for, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene to not want to run for office. I think our country would be so we'd be missing out on so much. Such good representation. That's fucking crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And again, it's like, it's so deeply cynical. It's a one so deeply cynical, and it's also so fucking transparent. So transparently like a cash grab. I don't know what to even say about that. And like you said, the idea that he can be arguing right now, simultaneously arguing that members of Congress are struggling so much because they haven't gotten a raise, whatever.
Who have free health care.
Who have free health
care in the country.
And pensions. They have everything and every opportunity to succeed. They are struggling so much that they need to be able to engage in insider trading. And at the same time, he's also arguing that, someone who's making $18,000 a year and has a kid shouldn't have Medicaid, that they should be working in order to receive that. So they should be working, obviously, a shitty job. If you are making $18,000 a year, you are not doing well. You are being underpaid. You are being exploited. But that person should have to, jump through all of these hoops to get Medicaid. Meanwhile, everyone in Congress should be able to engage in insider trading and make hundreds of thousands or millions. Like, how do you say stuff like that? How do you sleep at night and hold these ideas in your head? And it's just like, you could, like, you would have to have some insane just like software running in the background that is designed to like in the background of your mind that is designed to find ways to frame all of these things, to find ways to say people on Medicaid, working poor people on Medicaid don't deserve it, but members of Congress deserve to be able to engage in insider trading. Just like the idea that he's probably sitting around trying to come up with like bullshit that we will all buy so that he can sell his nonsense to us. I
Ultimate
just find that
gaslighting.
astounding. And there's, we have a little bit more on this. So the the representatives that he is defending here, I'm not suggesting that this particular representative is engaged in insider trading, but the class of them that he is defending right now. We have a clip that we wanted to share with you of one of them, very hard at work from recently. So Colin, if you can play the next clip, please.
I think it's time that we took a different look and a new look at the reign of Emperor Palpatine. I think maybe I mean.
I think that's the wrong clip.
Yeah, I think this next clip is the one on Facebook.
Yeah, Dingle falling asleep.
Yeah. Yeah. This one. So there you go. I mean, that was worth it. That was clearly worth it. Dingle hard at work, falling the fuck asleep. Like, and again, these are the people that Johnson is defending right now, to the exclusion of people who are actually deserving of something. And if anyone watching this, or me or Zaina or Colin, fell asleep at work, we would be fired immediately.
Absolutely.
Like, I cannot imagine. I have worked so many just like whatever kind of jobs over the course of my life. And if I had fallen asleep while doing any of them, again, I would have been fired. Like, no questions asked. And I would have said, well, I mean, that's unfair. I'm probably tired because I've been working, other jobs besides this. So this is probably my second or third job that I'm falling asleep at. But also, I understand you can't fall asleep at work. Like, so again, just another wonderful example of how hard our representatives are working for us, and just the insane hypocrisy. What is okay for them is not okay for the rest of us poors. And there was another video that we want to play on this about just Medicaid cuts and just how unpopular they actually are. So Colin, if you could play the next video.
I think it's time that we took a different look and a new look.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Colin. It's the one labeled 4-year sugar high.
and we'll play that. That's the Jennings. The one that you just played is the Scott Jennings one.
Yeah.
We'll play that last to close out the show.
Give me 1 sec. I might be missing.
Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah. So basically, to set up this next clip, while all of these people, while Mike Johnson is again defending his members of Congress, and trying to push through cuts to Medicaid, people have been protesting. It is a deeply unpopular position. People around the country, Republicans as well as Democrats, have been protesting against these cuts to Medicaid. Rightfully so. People rely on this. Working people rely on Medicaid, and so we're going to play a clip about just how unpopular these cuts actually are.
And no, they're not all paid protesters, by the way, which
No.
Ashley and John Farina can attest to.
No, they absolutely are not.
Everything we can to make Medicaid more efficient and preserve it for their future. My guess is they're probably hired to do that to some extent as well. And regardless, I just salute the House. They're making progress. This is tough work. It's tough work up here. Everybody's on a sugar high right now the last 4 years because of COVID, and it's hard to come off that sugar high.
What does that mean? The sugar high of COVID? So he's suggesting that, we've all gotten used to all of these benefits. So again, all of the really poor people on Medicaid, which I have been on, all of these people are on a sugar high from, again, receiving benefits. That's crazy. And like you said,
During an economic crash that we're still not recovered from? Really?
yeah. Yeah. The pandemic that we all just kind of decided was over and said, fuck it, we're going back to real life now because whatever, if people die, it doesn't matter. Like, insane. Absolutely insane. And the way that he phrased it could not be any more like condescending. Everyone's on a 4-year sugar high. Like that you tell children that, right? Like you tell kids like, oh, you had too much cake at a birthday party and you have to go to bed early because you're on a sugar high or whatever. Like
people who've lost their spouses to COVID or have lost their family members to lack of health care and are now struggling. It's such a disgusting, classist, elitist bullshit thing to say.
Yeah, it very much is. And what you were saying before we cut to the clip, like these people aren't paid protesters. Like you said, like John and I have been out there talking to people. They're not paid protesters. They're people who are concerned. They're either, a lot of the people that I've spoken to are either, personally affected by this. They have benefits that they don't want to lose because they don't know what they're going to do, how they're going to support themselves, how they're going to have health care if Medicaid is cut, or it's, a lot of retirees. A lot of people who are retired are out there, again, because they're worried about cuts to social services they need. They're worried about cuts to Social Security. And they're also worried about friends and family members, and they are able to be out there. So a lot of retirees who are very concerned about this kind of thing. And just like, it's just regular people, just regular working people who understand that other people rely on these services and we shouldn't cut them. Like, there's no other way to say that. It's not a complicated thing. People should be able to have some kind of, as we say, safety net for when things in their life are not going the way that they would want them to be. I will never understand the callousness and lack of empathy from any of these people. I would hate to be
healthcare is sugar to these people. Just basic.
Yeah.
Basic healthcare that most developed countries already enable for their citizens. It's sugar for us to have our get cancer treatments or treatments for diabetes.
Yeah. No, like you said, that's what they think of this. People are just getting extras. So we have a few more things that we wanted to get through. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and only talk about one of these things that we had. So on the topic of cutting people's healthcare, just in another example of Gavin Newsom being awful, he is going to be ending healthcare for immigrants. So, Colin, if we could go to the Guardian article about Newsom. I'm sorry, not the Guardian article. I'm sorry, the AP article. I'm sorry, that's my fault. So the AP article, California governor outlines $12 billion deficit and freeze on immigrant health program access. Sorry, we're skipping ahead and I'm giving Colin extra work, and I'm sorry, Colin.
In the meantime, while Colin is finding this, Gavin Newsom, we don't have to pull up the article for this, but Gavin Newsom has also attacked the homeless again, talking about cleaning up encampments. So he's basically, he's basically he's basically to the right of Mitt Romney at this point. So
seriously. Yeah, no, he is. So here is the AP article and another example of him just being awful. California governor outlines $12 billion deficit and freeze on immigrant health program access. So, our most vulnerable people in this country are losing access to their health care. California is facing a $12 billion deficit that Governor Gavin Newsom wants to help close by freezing enrollment in a state-funded healthcare program for immigrants living in California without legal status. Newsom announced the deficit and its plans to cover it Wednesday as he outlined his nearly $322 billion state spending plan for the upcoming fiscal year. Beyond higher than expected Medicaid spending, Newsom blamed broad economic uncertainty, including federal tariff policies and a volatile stock market. California relies heavily on revenue from a tax on capital gains. Newsom, a Democrat, highlighted California's contributions to the U.S. and world economy and said President Donald Trump's economic policies could reduce state revenues by $16 billion in the coming years. California is under assault. He said, we have a president that's been reckless in terms of assaulting those growth engines. So, he's saying we have a president that's been reckless in terms of assaulting those growth engines. We are basically going to take from the neediest amongst us to try to correct that deficit. So instead of raising taxes on anyone in the state of California, he is trying to get rid of health care for immigrants. Again, the people who need it the most. So it's just like all of these things are just so unbelievably backwards. Unbelievably.
He's also a liar, because applying for Med-Cal as an undocumented migrant is extremely difficult, and very few people are served under that program already. So he's specifically virtue signaling that he's done with, helping migrants, basically. He's signaling that he's moving right wing, because the truth of the matter is, just like the GOP in the House and Senate are arguing that there's a bunch of fraud and all of this other stuff with Medicaid, which there isn't. He's arguing that, there's hundreds of millions being spent on undocumented migrants getting health care in California when they're not. That is not factual.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, this is, as I think we put in the headline, kind of a preview of what you can expect for his 2028 presidential run, which we all know is coming. Like, it's just absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And like you said, it's just a way to signal to the Trump administration that, he's ready to cooperate. He's ready to cooperate. Not only is he ready to cooperate, it's to signal to, the MAGA base that somehow the Democrats always seem to think is in play for them. It's not. Like, any people who voted for Trump are not interested in Gavin Newsom. But it's a way to kind of align himself in what he sees will be the most winning direction for his eventual run. And
He
it's
wants
just
that tech bro money. He wants
Yeah.
that tech monarchy, oligarch tech bro money from Silicon Valley.
Absolutely. It's so pathetic. I don't know. So we also Zaina found a KFF investigation into the facts on actual immigrants receiving health care. So key facts on health coverage of immigrants. As of 2023, there were 47.1 million immigrants residing in the U.S., including 22.4 million non-citizen immigrants and 24.7 million naturalized citizens, who accounted for about 7% of the total population. And I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. As of 2023, half of likely undocumented immigrant adults, and 1 in 5, so 18% lawfully present immigrant adults reported being uninsured, compared to less than 1 in 10 naturalized citizens and U.S.-born citizens. Some states have expanded access to healthcare for immigrants, and many immigrants remain fearful of accessing assistance programs, including health coverage. And based on federal survey data, as of 2023, there were 47.1 million immigrants in the U.S. I'm trying to find where. Okay, so on uninsured rates. Okay, so this is the main point. About 1 in 5 lawfully present immigrant adults, and half of likely undocumented immigrant adults said they were uninsured. So I mean that's half of people. Half of people who are here are actually lacking in healthcare. So it's all nonsense.
This idea that they're all getting Medicaid is just not factual. You cannot get Medicaid if you're an undocumented migrant. You can't. You will be denied Medicaid. There are some state programs for undocumented migrants, but you cannot get CHIP if you're an undocumented migrant. Though if your child has U.S. citizenship, they can, because they're a U.S. citizen born here.
Yeah.
So in some of the administration statistics and the GOP statistics that they're trying to throw around, they're including children that are born here of immigrants who can get CHIP, but they are U.S. citizens getting Medicaid, not quote unquote illegal, people who are undocumented, which they call illegals to dehumanize them. So, and with half of them not even having any kind of health care, that's a substantial number. And as you had mentioned, them being afraid to even go and file. So,
yeah. Yeah, I mean that all makes sense. If I was, an immigrant in this country, I would be afraid to file too. I would be afraid to present myself anywhere that might lead to me being deported. So that makes sense. And again, like as you're saying, if someone is born here, they're a citizen. So if someone's parents are immigrants, but the child has been born here, they get health care. Because that's how it works, because you were born here. And of course, that is, another reason why they're trying to end birthright citizenship. It's just all incredibly cruel. So we had one more thing that we wanted to get to.
Just one. That's what I thought you were about to show with the KPP. But yes, we've got Scott Jennings. And this kind of, I thought that this was interesting because Scott Jennings makes millions of dollars going on CNN and going on all of these panels, and he's just a nuisance and ill-informed and ignorant and a raging fascist, and I don't use that word lightly. A couple weeks ago, he was arguing that, what's so wrong with authoritarianship? And then he's also like, we should have screenings on whether people are un-American or not. And if they are un-American, we should be able to consider them a terrorist. So this is funny, but also scary, and kind of wanted to close out with something lighthearted in a way, but also it's disturbing that this panel is laughing at this and that he's actually saying these words out of his mouthy mouth. Yeah.
Yes.
I
So
think it's
this
time
last
that we
clip,
took a different
should
look
be-
and a new look at the reign of Emperor Palpatine. I think maybe I mean, you did a podcast on this. I think he's getting a bad rap. And look what he did. He took on an entrenched deep state at the Jedi Council. He tried to bring order to the, he wanted free and fair and reciprocal trade around the galaxy.
Blew up Alderaan.
Protected law and order. Well, I think some could argue that it was warranted given their rebellious activities. I mean, he defended the empire against unelected hippies and violent protesters. I'm just saying, it's been a while. We may need to take a look at this again and say, was he right? And maybe it's time to take a different look at his
Was
leader. I'm just saying.
Palpatine right about everything?
That was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my entire life. I don't even know what else to say about this. Like, Palpatine is not the real hero of this story. I don't know. Trying to flip Star Wars to say that Luke Skywalker is the real enemy in this whole
The
story.
Sith Lords were actually the good guys, and that blowing up Alderaan, an entire planet, was legitimate because there were some terrorists on that planet in his mind. And for me, that parallels, this is so crazy because he's talking about fiction here, right? but it parallels his advocating for leveling Gaza. He literally advocates for genocide. He advocates for locking up people that he sees as violent protesters. He advocates for people that are determined un-American. And then he literally comes on and he's like, we got to rethink, who we classify as the good guys and bad guys. Maybe the authoritarians, maybe the Sith Lords were actually the good guys. And it's hilarious, and he's so stupid. But there's also another layer of like nefariousness where the right wing right now, the insane right wing, are trying to rewrite history, trying to rewrite how we view fascism and how we view these things, and even lessons that we've learned from art and media. They're trying to reframe it in real time. And I get a little aggravated with the CNN panel because they're just laughing at it like it's a joke, when someone on that panel should have said, dude, you're an authoritarian and a fascist, so you joking about Palpatine and the Sith Lords being the good guys has a deeper undertone. It's very nefarious. They're using pop culture to try to reframe, kind of like a cult does, reframe your mindset on what is ethical and what is unethical. Like, blowing up Alderaan may have been a good thing. Like, are you crazy? That was like a huge important moment in the Star Wars series where the Death Star literally blows up an entire planet, genocides a whole planet. And he was saying, yeah, I mean, there were terrorists on that planet, people that were hippies. The Jedi were a bunch of hippie terrorists. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. And like you said, we laughed too. Like we had been talking about this before the stream, and we were both laughing about how stupid it is. But it's exactly what you said, Zana. It's stupid and just kind of like mind-boggling that he would think to use this analogy. Like I don't even understand. But like it's not. It's scary. It's scary, and it's a way to like I can almost hear like the gears turning in his head as he's like thinking about this, like, oh yeah, this is good. I'm gonna get the youth on board with my like genocide, my desire for genocides by using a Star Wars reference that like, the kids will love this. Like, crazy.
And it was like a don't look up moment when the panelists were just like laughing it off when he's doing like this very dark, weird propaganda, like 1984 style Orwellian propaganda.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. It's insane. All of it is insane. And again, it's like, we should be scared to hear people talking like that. And it's not something that, we should just be laughing off. It's not something that we should just be laughing off. And it is indicative of where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a good place where we are right now. I guess I don't know that I have anything else to say on Star Wars, and Star Wars being utilized.
Moron, but an intentional moron.
Yeah, an intentional moron who is trying to use Star Wars as, like state propaganda, which is crazy, just crazy. So unless you have any other thoughts on this, I'm going to read super chats.
No, I have one more thought. And actually, before we read super chats, sign up to be a member of Status Coup News, because we're not out here platforming dumbass pundits like this guy. We're actually reporting the news. We're bringing you guys facts. Ashley and John Farina have been on the ground across the country. We are bringing you, I guess, those hippie Jedi Knights that are forming unions and fighting against the Sith Lords. So I think that Colin has a little reel or something about a discount that's going on. I'm not 100% sure, as I haven't seen it yet, but I know that we wanted to be sure that we let you guys know that was going on. Did you want to show that really quick, Colin, and maybe explain?
If you're a member, just go to StatusCoup.com, sign in to your account, and then highlight the members tab and click on your level followed by discount, and then just copy the code it says there. And then you can either click on the store tab or go to statuscoup.com/store and choose from any of the products we have there, from our different shirts to various stickers. And then just when you go to checkout, paste that code that you have.
So there you go. There you go. Yeah. So if you can, please do that. Please sign up as a member at statuscoup.com/join. And like Zaina said, like, we want to be able to do more coverage. Want to be able to do more coverage for you guys. We want to be on the ground more. Want to be able to bring more reporting from Zaina, from Tina, from Ron. We want to be able to cover all of our bases for you guys. So please do become a member at statuscoup.com/join, and there are benefits to doing that. So I guess we will move on to super chats before we call it for tonight. Okay, so Joe Strong has been a member for 1 month. Level Fight the Power, and a lot of Status Coup hearts. So thank you very much, Joe. We appreciate it. And Sixth Sense Amelia sends a super sticker. And she says thanks with a purple heart. So thank you, Sixth Sense Amelia. We appreciate it. And Cat Faye Garrett sends a super chat with the pear character jumping up and down and saying #1 fan. Thank you.
Aw. Thanks, Kat.
That's all of them.
That's it. All right. Thank you. So that's it for super chats. That's it for us. I think, again, unless Zaina, you have any other thoughts that you want to add before we close out, I think that'll do it. We've gone over. Don't want to keep anyone for too much longer. I know Zaina and Colin probably have stuff that they want to do. So thank you guys for watching and being here with us. We will be back soon. Hopefully Zaina and I will be back on Monday for the live stream, and we will keep you guys posted as far as that. Tomorrow, John and I will be on the ground covering Mayor Ross Baraka's arraignment in Newark. So if you can, please do watch that. We're going to start live streaming early. I know the arraignment is at 10 a.m., so do expect to see that from us early tomorrow. And we would love to have you guys follow along with us. And that's it.
And I believe that I have scheduled an interview with Abby Martin about anti-DPS laws. So I believe it's scheduled for Friday. I'm still waiting for her confirmation. I'm sure she will, because she'd already said that, we can meet Thursday or Friday. So that should be coming out probably this weekend, I would say. And looking forward to hearing her thoughts on that, as they are trying to ramp up anti-BDS laws across the country and putting more pressure on us. So I would love to hear from her on that. She's an amazing journalist. So I'm looking forward to that interview as well.
That's great. That's great. I'm super excited to watch that. That should be an excellent interview. Again, I'm really excited to watch it, so I can't wait for it to come out. And everybody else should watch it too. That should be an important conversation between two really important journalists. So again, everyone, please do watch that, and we will be back soon. So we will see you guys on the next live stream. Bye.